tough. Um, but we made a commitment that this book was going to pick up right from where the first book. I think this died. Hold on.
Hello, is this one on? Okay.
We'll trade mics. This will go great. This will be collaborative. We made a decision, since the first book ended with a cliffhanger, that we were going to begin right at the moment when it left off. We weren't going to do a time hop centuries later, and Ramses and Julie were going to be trying to figure out cell phones and automobiles that went faster than 20 miles an hour. So we made that commitment, but we did have a big disagreement, but it was a friendly disagreement about what role Cleopatra should play in this book. Because in the first book, she is awakened without her consent. She is confused. She is monstrous. She has incredible strength. She kills accidentally and not so accidentally. And at the end of the first book, we realize she has not been incinerated in a car wreck as we believe she had been.
No, in the
What?
first book, I'm sorry. In the first book, she wakes up. I mean, we know at the end that she's alive, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I took that scene and we put that scene in the book and continued it. And so, yeah, I think sharing the microphone is going to be harder than writing the book together. But anyway, so we made this decision, and I insisted that in this book, Cleopatra had to be a full-on, let's check your mic, is it working?
Wicked.
Okay, good. We're back to normal. So relieved. I insisted that Cleopatra had to be a monster, that she was our villainess, and that she shouldn't have too many dimensions. And you said, I'm not really so sure.
No, no. Well, for one thing, I don't think I've ever created anybody that was totally evil.
Right.
I can't do it. I've been accused of having no antagonist in the book because I guess I believe everybody has their own point of view on what they're doing, and probably the most monstrous person in the world somehow thinks he's doing what he has to do to survive. So I always get involved in making the monster sympathetic. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
But you gave me the latitude to go in my own direction with
Sure,
it, with Cleopatra, and then I went in my own direction, and I was like, this sucks. She was right. You know, don't stand on your ego here. This is what collaboration is about. Sometimes you realize that you don't have the best idea. And in that instance, I did not have the best idea, and I think that was how I fell in love with Cleopatra as a character, and the book really became about Cleopatra because we didn't have the subtitle when we started writing the book. We just knew it would be Ramses the Damned
Right.
2.
Yeah.
You know?
We did not know. We want to go right into the next book, actually. And we want to continue it right at that moment during the First World War. And the question is, when are we going to be able to do it with the television series based on the Vampire Chronicles? It's kind of a happy problem.
It's a very happy
But
problem.
we are hoping to do it.
We were talking about this earlier. We are celebrating our 1-year anniversary of Mom going on Facebook and announcing that all the rights to the Vampire Chronicles had reverted back to her.
Happy moment.
And in that time, I have to say, there were 2 TV executives who were in the audience that night who waited in line, literally passed through the line and brought us their cards. They were Katie Rizel and Adam Fasulo from Paramount TV. And they got the projects. And Katie is here tonight in the front row. And Mom was very clear in her Facebook statement about the type of TV series that she wanted to develop about the vampire Lestat.
Right.
And we can't say much, but we can say a year later we are definitely developing that show.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah.
We are working with the best people we have ever worked with, really. We are the best, most sensitive, intelligent, and creative executives and producers we've ever worked with. It's just, it makes you look back over the years and think, well, all the different disappointments, well, it's all redeemed now because this is a perfect moment for the series. And I'd also like to say that our agent is here in the audience. Agents don't get enough credit.
Right.
We have a mastermind of an agent, Elizabeth Newman. She's right
Also
there.
in the front row, turning bright red along with Katie.
She was quite incredible and believed in us and believed in our project. So, but anyway, we know you're here for this book, so we'll get back to it. We cannot at this point announce a deal for this book. Shall we make up something?
We should make something up. We should make up a casting announcement.
Yes.
No, but I'm going to put you on the spot. I want to talk about because people say, how did you collaborate with your mom? And I said, well, part of it is I love my mom and she's a genius. But the other, The other
remind
part
you
of
this
it.
at the appropriate time. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The other part of it is that this was a world that was already built.
Right.
So there was less to argue about. It was about joining a world and being invited into it by you, which was wonderful. But I wanted you to talk some about where it came from. And I think some of it was, if I understand you correctly, you went to see black and white mummy movies as a little girl, and they scared you
very
out of your head.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, I had such a traumatic experience going to probably one of the worst movies ever made. It was a bee movie. It's the bee mummy movie in which Karis drinks the tana leaf fluid and then staggers after one person after another. It's kind of an early Terminator movie. And it scared me so bad as a kid that when I went home that night from the movie theater, my parents couldn't wake me up. I was in some kind of nightmare state for hours, and they finally succeeded in waking me up. And of course, I grew up to be fascinated by horror, vampires, mummies, monsters, everything that had terrified me in that movie. And of course, I had really only one little idea when I started the original Ramses. It was that this mummy wasn't going to stagger, and he wasn't going to be a revenant. He was really going to bust out of the wrappings and be articulate and charming, you know. And that's what drove the first novel, really, was my idea of having that happen, and what is that like for the people who meet him.
But do you think that was part of the process of becoming less terrified by that image? Like you sort of rescued the mummy in your imagination?
Yeah. It must be, but I never analyze anything like that when I'm writing. I just think this is exciting. You know, I can't wait for him to to break out of the bandages and be a handsome man.
Yeah.
I wanted to go with that. In fact, that's what I've always done. I mean, the vampires, the same thing. Try to make them as charming and glamorous and compelling and refined as possible. The very opposite of the original Dracula.
Right. A couple reviewers have pointed out that this is a different kind of immortality in this world, that this immortality does not require the taking of life. Now, as people who are familiar with the Vampire Chronicles know that the evolved vampires come to feed off the blood of the evildoer, and they're able to read souls in such a way that they can know if someone's an evildoer. So it allows them to sort of contend with their monstrousness. But in this world, the immortality comes from a elixir, and the recipe for it is a secret, but it's not, you know, it doesn't involve advanced science fiction, if you will.
No, it really is in Ramses' mind. He's memorized it, and he can make up the elixir at any time. But I've always seen these characters as incredibly vulnerable. If they're captured, they can be tortured because they can't die.
Right.
And they can be tortured, presumably, to give up the secret of the elixir. And the elixir, if it got out, could, of course, really theoretically destroy the world, because you'd have people who never die consuming food and drink all the time, and it would lead to, it would lead to catastrophe.
Right.
It really would. It would be so, the human race would be threatened. So to me, they have a downside to this.
Yeah.
That's the downside, and you expanded a little further. I won't reveal all the secrets, but you expanded a little further with that downside, with the secrets of the Queen Bektoten and what she knows about the elixir.
Yeah. It's always a fun opportunity in a book in a series to go deeper into the origins if they haven't been spelled out exactly in the first book, and I think that's what we had the opportunity to do here. But I didn't go alone. You thought of it too as well.
Yeah.
You're giving me a lot of credit. Thank you. I think we want to open it up now for questions with the proviso that we both don't hear very well. So if you think you're shouting, you're probably too quiet, and if we can't hear you, we will have someone bring you the microphone.
Yeah,
How does that sound?
Why don't we give Rosie the microphone?
Okay.
Take it to people
Good. And so usually we sit here for about 1 awkward minute, and then 10 hands shoot up, and everything is good. So who's gonna go first? 1, 2, all the way in the back. You're gonna, okay.
Please clear up for me whether you liked or didn't like the film version of Interview with the Vampire.
The question is, you heard that question?
Actually, I thought it was very, very good. I was expecting the worst, and I was very surprised at its fidelity to the book and how hard Tom Cruise worked to beat the actual Lestat from the pages of the first 3 books.
Yep.
I was really impressed, and I was very impressed with the whole thing, with Neil Jordan doing his magic in that film, and I really did. I was quite blown away, really. And
You know, fake news said that you didn't like it.
the fake news. Well, that is a fake story because I really loved it. In fact, I called the producer David Geffen immediately and told him that I loved it. And I was very happy to promote it, and actually went out and did promote it a little bit on television. So I really think the whole thing worked out wonderfully well. Even though after that we had a pretty dreadful time for a long time with the vampires. That movie is still, I mean, anytime we talk about the Vampire Chronicles, there will be articles around the world with pictures of Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt in the costumes of that movie. And I really think that movie helped to make Lestat, my beloved Lestat, a hero all over the place. I mean, people know what the name means. And so I'm grateful for that. And as time goes on, I get more and more grateful for what happened, because a lot of things can go wrong in the collaborative process. It can be very disappointing. And I was really blessed with what happened at that time. Can I ask you a question? Did you like it?
I certainly did, yes.
Okay, right. That's funny. Okay.
Yes, all the way in the back. Yes.
As you know yourself, a lot of your
Did you hear?
No, just
Okay.
run the mic back.
Well, as you know yourself, a lot of your writing they've been made into script and into movies. How much of that now goes into your writing process? When you're writing, do you kind of have that in mind of, well, if this is made into a script or into a film, does that affect your writing as you're doing it? Does that kind of come into play while you're going through the process of kind of gathering ideas and writing style? Do you feel that it's done that?
It was the questions for you. Because you have been adapted into movies and TV, and because you have written scripts, do you feel that has changed or evolved your writing process when you're working on a novel? Are you imagining what the...
Yeah, sure. No, when I write a novel, I'm still doing exactly what I did before, and that's just putting myself in it. Really just submerging myself in it, not analyzing consciously at all. I think every author organizes their novels. And you do it either very, very consciously or you do it very unconsciously. And I've always been the unconscious organizer. I just go with it, see things through the point of view of the characters, and really don't try to figure it out too much. You know, of course, you know, if you've talked about your work and been asked questions about it and written things about it, and you've done that for years, you're going to be it's going to be harder to put all that aside and just, as we say in the South, get down with your bad self and just write that book, you know. But it can be done, and that's the only way I can do it. And the faster it goes, the better it is for me. The less time to think, the less time to question or to brood. And what has always worked for me is excess, going to extremes, doing things that other people said were just not possible to do in fiction or shouldn't be done. And I'm still that way now, 40 years after Interview with the Vampire. Can't change. What about you?
Yes.
Whether you collaborate or if you just write it, is there a particular character that you would like to explore the origin story more of, like how you did with Armand and Marius? Is there a particular character that you'd like to expand upon?
Did you hear the question? The question was, is there a particular character whose origin story you would like to explore more that maybe you haven't yet, like, as you did with Armand and Marius?
I think so, yeah, because I'm still creating new characters for the Vampire Chronicles. And I would like to go in. I had a whole backstory for the character Gregory that didn't make it into the book, except in a few mentions of how he woke up in the Christian era and realized the world had changed. I really wanted to talk a lot about that, about how the world looked to him and how he saw it as dynamic and changing in a way that we don't see the ancient world, but he saw it that way compared to the world before, which really was, in his mind, static, but I just never got to write that. But, you know, I tell you the truth, I can't work with some characters at all. it's a problem. People have said,